Rich man left a note on a park bench. The struggling waitress who read it couldn't believe what happened in EXT. The autumn wind swept through Riverside Park, scattering golden leaves across the weathered wooden benches that lined the walking path. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in October, and the park was nearly empty, except for a few early joggers and dog walkers making their way through the crisp Manhattan air. Emily Morrison hurried along the pathway, her worn sneakers crunching softly on the fallen leaves. At 28, she had the kind of tired beauty that came from working double shifts and worrying about bills. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and dark circles under her green eyes told the story of someone who hadn't slept well in months. She clutched her phone tightly, checking the time again. 6:48 a.m. She had exactly 12 minutes to get to Bernie's Diner on 84th Street, where she'd been working as a waitress for the past 3 years. Being late wasn't an option, not when she was already behind on rent and her landlord, Mr. Peterson, had been leaving increasingly aggressive voicemals. As she rounded the bend near the old oak tree, something white caught her eye. On the bench beneath the tree, her favorite bench, the one where she sometimes sat during her lunch breaks when the weather was nice, sat a folded piece of paper, held down by a small stone. Emily paused, glancing around the park. The morning joggers had passed, and she was alone. She approached the bench cautiously, her curiosity getting the better of her despite her hurry. The paper was expensive looking, cream-colored with a subtle watermark. Her name was written on the outside in elegant handwriting. For Emily, her heart skipped a beat. How could someone know her name? She looked around again, half expecting to see someone watching her, but the park remained empty. With trembling fingers, she picked up the note and unfolded it. The handwriting inside was the same careful script. Asterisk. Dear Emily, if you're reading this, then you're exactly who I hoped would find it. I've watched you sit on this bench during your lunch breaks, and I've seen the kindness in your eyes when you feed the pigeons with scraps from your own meal. I've noticed how you always smile at the elderly man who feeds the ducks, even when you look exhausted. The world needs more people like you, people who show compassion even when they're struggling themselves. I want to help you the way you've unknowingly helped others just by being yourself. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., go to the law office of Henderson and Associates on Park Avenue. Ask for Mr. James Henderson. Tell him you're there about the Riverside Foundation. He'll know what to do. Trust me, Emily. This isn't a joke or a scam. Sometimes good things happen to good people, and you deserve good things. With respect and admiration, a friend who believes in kindness. Emily read the note 3 times, her hands shaking slightly. This had to be some kind of mistake. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, people who ate ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week and had to choose between buying groceries or putting gas in their beat-up Honda Civic. She looked at her phone. 6:52 a.m. She was going to be late, but she couldn't move. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this person? How did they know her name? How did they know about her lunch breaks in the park? Emily Morrison? She spun around to find Mrs. Chun, an elderly woman who lived in her apartment building, walking her small terrier. Oh, hi, Mrs. Chun, Emily said, quickly folding the note and putting it in her purse. You look like you've seen a ghost, dear. Are you all right? Emily forced a smile. I'm fine, just running late for work. She glanced at her phone again. 6:54. Well, don't let me keep you, but Emily? Mrs. Chun's weathered face creased with concern. I heard you talking to Mr. Peterson yesterday about the rent. If you need anything, I'm okay, Mrs. Chun. Really, thank you though. Emily's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. She hated that her financial struggles were becoming neighborhood gossip. As she hurried away from the park, Emily's mind kept returning to the note. Henderson and Associates, Park Avenue. The Riverside Foundation. The words played over and over in her head like a song she couldn't shake. By the time she reached Bernie's diner, she was 7 minutes late. The familiar smell of bacon grease and coffee hit her as she pushed through the glass door, the little bell above it announcing her arrival. "Morrison, you're late," Bernie Kowalski's gruff voice called from behind the counter. At 62, Bernie was all bark and no bite, but Emily still felt her stomach clench with anxiety. "I'm sorry, Bernie, save it. Table 6 has been waiting for 10 minutes, and the coffee pot's been empty since Martha left." He gestured toward the corner booth where a businessman in expensive suit sat checking his watch impatiently. Emily tied her apron around her waist and grabbed the coffee pot. Right away, the morning rush was brutal. Emily poured coffee, took orders, and served plates of eggs and hash browns in a blur of activity. But through it all, the note seemed to burn in her purse like a secret she couldn't keep. During her first break at 10:30 a.m., she sat in the cramped break room and pulled out the note again. The handwriting was definitely masculine, confident, but not rushed. The paper felt expensive between her fingers. "What you got there?" Emily looked up to find Maggie, the other morning waitress, peering over her shoulder. Maggie was 45, divorced, and had been working at Bernie's for 8 years. She had the kind of no-nonsense attitude that came from surviving life's disappointments. "I found this note in the park this morning. Someone left it for me." Emily handed it to Maggie, who read it with raised eyebrows. "Holy shit, Em. This is either the best thing that's ever happened to you, or you're about to be featured on one of those crime shows." Maggie handed the note back. "You're not actually going to go, are you?" "I don't know. What if it's real? What if it's not? What if it's some creep who's been watching you?" Emily's stomach dropped. She hadn't considered that possibility. But how would they know my name? "There are a million ways someone could find out your name, honey. You wear a name tag at work. You probably have mail sticking out of your bag. Sometimes, hell, maybe they asked around the neighborhood." The rest of Emily's shift passed in a haze of uncertainty. Every time she looked at the note, she felt a flutter of hope followed immediately by a wave of skepticism. By the time she clocked out at 3 p.m., she had decided to forget about it entirely. But as she walked home to her studio apartment on the Upper West Side, Emily found herself taking the long route through Riverside Park. She sat on the same bench where she'd found the note, watching the afternoon light filter through the oak leaves. "You look troubled." Emily turned to find an elderly man sitting on the bench beside her. He was well dressed in a wool coat and polished shoes, with silver hair and kind blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Emily asked, suddenly wary after Maggie's warnings. "We've never been introduced, but I've seen you here before. You're the young woman who shares her lunch with the pigeons." He smiled warmly. "I'm Harold Whitman." "Emily Morrison." She shook his offered hand, noting how soft and well-manicured it was. "Emily, that's a beautiful name. Tell me what's troubling you." "You have the look of someone wrestling with a difficult decision." There was something about Harold's manner that put Emily at ease. He reminded her of her grandfather, who had passed away when she was 16. "Someone left me a note," she said slowly. "A strange note that ... Well, it sounds too good to be true." "Ah," Harold nodded knowingly. "And you're wondering whether to trust it." "Exactly. My friend thinks it could be dangerous. Bet someone might be watching me." Harold was quiet for a moment, watching a squirrel gather acorns near their feet. "You know, Emily, I've lived for 73 years, and I've learned that the most dangerous thing isn't taking a risk. It's letting fear keep you from recognizing genuine opportunity when it presents itself." He stood up, brushing off his coat. "But of course, the decision is yours. I will say this, though, sometimes the universe has a way of putting exactly what we need right in front of us, even when we're not looking for it." As Harold walked away, Emily pulled out the note one more time. Henderson and Associates. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. She thought about her overdue rent, her empty refrigerator, and the student loan bills that kept her awake at night. She thought about her dreams of going back to school, of maybe becoming a teacher someday, dreams that seemed further away with each passing month. But mostly, she thought about Harold's words. Sometimes the universe has a way of putting exactly what we need right in front of us. That evening, Emily stood in front of her bathroom mirror, rehearsing what she would say. "Hi, I'm here about the Riverside Foundation." She shook her head. "Hello, I'm Emily Morrison. Someone told me to ask Mr. Henderson about the Riverside Foundation." Her reflection stared back at her, tired but hopeful. She had made her decision. Tomorrow morning, she would find out if the note was real. Emily barely slept that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling as car horns and sirens provided the soundtrack of the city that never sleeps. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the note, heard Harold's words, and felt the weight of possibility pressing down on her chest. At 6 a.m., she gave up on sleep and made herself a cup of instant coffee with shaking hands. She had called in sick to Bernie's the first time she'd ever done so, and the guilt sat heavy in her stomach alongside her anxiety. By 8:30 a.m., Emily stood outside the impressive glass building that housed Henderson and Associates. The law firm occupied floors 15 through 18 of the Park Avenue high-rise, and Emily felt impossibly small as she craned her neck to look up at the towering structure. She had dressed in her best outfit, a navy blue dress she'd bought at a thrift store for job interviews, and her only pair of nice shoes, black flats that she'd resoled twice. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she'd applied a light layer of makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a security desk manned by a stern-looking guard in a uniform that probably cost more than Emily made in a week. "I'm here to see Mr. James Henderson," she told the receptionist, a perfectly polished woman in her 30s who looked like she belonged in a magazine. "Do you have an appointment?" Emily's heart sank. "No, but someone told me to come here about the Riverside Foundation." The receptionist's expression changed immediately. She picked up her phone and spoke in hushed tones, then looked back at Emily with something that might have been respect. "Mr. Henderson will see you now. Take the elevator to the 18th floor. His secretary will be waiting for you." The elevator ride felt like it lasted forever. Emily's palms were sweating, and she kept checking her reflection in the polished doors. What if this was all a mistake? What if she was about to embarrass herself in front of one of the city's most prominent lawyers? The 18th floor was even more impressive than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Central Park, and the reception area was decorated with expensive artwork and fresh flowers. "Ms. Morrison?" A woman in her 50s approached with a warm smile. "I'm Patricia, Mr. Henderson's secretary. He's ready for you." Emily followed Patricia down a hallway lined with law books and framed degrees. She was ushered into a corner office that was larger than Emily's entire apartment. James Henderson was a man in his early 60s with silver hair and the kind of confident bearing that came from decades of success. He stood up from behind a massive mahogany desk and extended his hand. "Ms. Morrison, please, have a seat. I've been expecting you." Emily shook his hand, noting the firm grip and the way his eyes seemed to take in everything about her in a single glance. "You've been expecting me? Indeed. Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." Emily sat on the edge of the leather chair across from his desk, her purse clutched tightly in her lap. "Mr. Henderson, I'm not sure why I'm here, exactly. Someone left me a note telling me to come see you about something called the Riverside Foundation." Henderson's expression softened, and he leaned back in his chair. "Miss Morrison, what I'm about to tell you might sound unbelievable, but I assure you it's completely true. The Riverside Foundation was established 6 months ago by a client of mine, a man who wished to remain anonymous." He opened a folder on his desk and pulled out several documents. This client had been battling cancer for 2 years. He was a wealthy man who had made his fortune in real estate, but he had no family, no children. As his illness progressed, he began to think about his legacy. Emily's heart was pounding. What does this have to do with me? He spent his final months observing people, really watching them. He wanted to find individuals who embodied the kind of compassion and selflessness that he felt he had missed in his own life. He would sit in parks, in coffee shops, in diners, just watching how people treated each other. Henderson leaned forward. He noticed you, Ms. Morrison. He saw you, sharing your lunch with the pigeons, even when you clearly couldn't afford to. He watched you help an elderly man who had dropped his groceries. He observed you leaving your own coat with a homeless woman on a cold night. Emily's eyes widened. She remembered that night. It had been in February, and she'd seen a woman sleeping on a bench with only a thin blanket. Emily had impulsively given her the winter coat she'd bought at Goodwill, then shivered through the rest of her walk home. How could he know about that? He made it his business to know. He was looking for someone who showed kindness without expecting anything in return. Someone who helped others even when they were struggling themselves. Henderson's voice grew. Gentle, he found that person in you. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. What happened to him? He passed away 3 weeks ago. But before he died, he made arrangements. The Riverside Foundation was created with a single purpose: to help you build the life you deserve. Henderson slid a document across the desk. Emily looked down at it, her vision blurring with tears. It was a cashier's check made out to her name for $100,000. I don't understand, she whispered. There's more. Henderson pulled out another document. He also purchased a small house in Queens, nothing fancy, but it's yours, free and clear. The deed is in your name. Emily's hands shook as she stared at the check. $100,000. She had never seen that much money in her entire life. But why me? I'm nobody special. I'm just a waitress who can't even pay her rent on time. You're exactly what he was looking for, Ms. Morrison. Someone who shows kindness not because they have to, but because they choose to. Someone who gives even when they have nothing left to give. Henderson stood up and walked to the window, gazing out at the park below. He left me a letter to read to you, if you're interested. Emily nodded, not trusting her voice. Henderson returned to his desk and pulled out an envelope. He opened it carefully and began to read, asterisk, Dear Emily, if you're hearing this, then I found the courage to go through with my plan, and you found the courage to follow the instructions in my note. I hope you can forgive an old man for being so mysterious, but I wanted to be sure you would come of your own free will, not because you felt obligated. My name was Robert Blackwood, and I was not a good man for most of my life. I built my fortune by being ruthless, by caring only about profit and success. I had no friends, no family who would speak to me, no legacy worth leaving behind. But in my final months, as I sat in parks and watched the world go by, I began to see what I had missed. I saw kindness in small gestures. I saw generosity in unexpected places. And I saw you. You, Emily, showed me what it means to be truly wealthy. Not in money, but in spirit. You gave your lunch to hungry pigeons, your coat to a cold stranger, your smile to an elderly man who needed it. You did these things not because anyone was watching, but because it was who you are. I cannot undo the selfishness of my past, but I can invest in the selflessness of your future. The money and the house are yours to do with as you please. Go back to school, travel the world, start a business, whatever makes you happy. But I have one request, if you're willing. Keep being kind. Keep showing compassion. The world needs more people like you, and I hope this gift will allow you to spread that kindness even further. Thank you for showing a dying man what it means to live. With gratitude and respect. Robert Blackwood, asterisk. By the time Henderson finished reading, Emily was crying openly. She thought about all the nights she'd gone to bed hungry, All the time she'd had to choose between medicine and groceries. All the dreams she'd put on hold because survival had to come first. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything. The money is yours, no strings attached." "Well, except for one small thing," Henderson smiled. "Mr. Blackwood asked that you continue to visit the bench in Riverside Park occasionally. He said it brought him peace to know that someone would still be there, still showing kindness to the world." Emily wiped her eyes with the tissue Patricia had quietly placed beside her chair. "Of course, I sit there anyway. It's my favorite spot." "I know." He knew too. As Emily walked out of the law office an hour later, her purse containing the cashier's check and the deed to her new house, she felt like she was floating. The October air seemed crisper, the city sounds more musical, the faces of passing strangers more beautiful. She made her way to Riverside Park, to the bench where it had all started. The afternoon sun was warm on her face as she sat down, still, clutching the documents that had changed her life. "You look like someone who's had good news." Emily looked up to find Harold Whitman approaching with a gentle smile. He sat down beside her, the same way he had the day before. "The best news," Emily said, then paused. "Harold, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Yesterday, when you found me here, you seemed to know exactly what to say. Like you knew what I was going through." Harold was quiet for a moment, watching the pigeons gather hopefully near their feet. "Sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, exactly when we need to be there. Yesterday, you needed to hear that it was okay to take a risk. Today, you need to hear that you deserve every good thing that's coming to you." Emily studied his face, seeing something familiar in his kind eyes. "You knew him, didn't you? Robert Blackwood." Harold's smile was sad but peaceful. "We were friends many years ago, before he became so focused on money and success. I tried to stay in touch, but ... he shrugged. "I'm glad he found his way back to kindness in the end. And I'm glad he found you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the world go by. Emily thought about the note that had started it all, about the man who had watched her from afar and seen something worth saving. She thought about Harold's words about the universe putting exactly what we need in front of us. Double quotes, "Harold," she said softly. "Yes? Thank you for yesterday, for encouraging me to be brave. Thank you, Emily, for being exactly who you are. Robert was right. The world needs more people like you." As the sun began to set over the city, Emily remained on the bench, planning her future. She would go back to school, maybe become a teacher like she'd always dreamed. She would help other people the way she'd been helped. And she would continue to visit this bench, this place where kindness had found her when she needed it most. In her purse, alongside the check and the deed, she carefully folded the original note. She would keep it forever, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things begin with the simplest acts of human kindness. The pigeons gathered at her feet, and Emily smiled as she reached into her purse for the granola bar she'd brought for lunch. Some things, she thought as she scattered the crumbs, would never change, and that was exactly the way it should be. The end.
Thank you for watching this story unfold with us here on M&A The Story Unfolds. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new tale. We'd love to know where you're watching. Leave a comment below and tell us what part of the world you're joining us from. Your support means everything. See you in the next story.